Something lives at the bottom of the Mariana Trench that has no business existing. Not in the way people throw that phrase around online. It's not a blurry photo, not a misidentified whale. Something that has been documented, studied, quietly filed away, and almost never discussed in mainstream science coverage. And the reason scientists won't talk about it isn't conspiracy. It's something far more uncomfortable than that. It's that they genuinely don't have an explanation. The Mariana Trench sits in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Mariana Islands. It's the deepest known point on Earth. At its lowest, a section called Challenger Deep. The ocean floor drops to nearly 36,000 feet below the surface. To put that in perspective, if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be covered by more than a mile of water. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the ocean floor. And the Mariana Trench? We've explored less than 5% of it. So when something shows up down there that breaks the rules about pressure tolerance, about bioluminescence, about biological impossibility, scientists don't go public. They publish, quietly, in journals most people will never read. They use careful language. They avoid the headline. But the data doesn't lie. Let's start with what we know for certain, because the known facts alone are disturbing enough before we even get to the part that has researchers privately unsettled. The pressure at Challenger Deep is approximately 1,086 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. That's 750 pounds per square inch pressing in from every direction simultaneously. For context, that's enough force to crush a standard submarine, like a paper cup. The temperature hovers just above freezing. There is zero sunlight. The environment is so hostile that, for decades, serious scientists believed nothing complex could survive there. They were wrong. In 1960, the bathyscaphe Trieste made the first crewed descent to Challenger Deep. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh spent 20 minutes at the bottom. In that brief window, Picard reported seeing a flatfish moving along the seafloor. A fish, at 36,000 feet, moving, alive. That single observation didn't make headlines the way it should have. It was mentioned in passing, almost as a footnote. Because what it implied was too strange to sit comfortably inside the existing scientific framework. If complex vertebrate life could survive those pressures, what else was down there? And why weren't we talking about it? Fast forward to 2012. Filmmaker James Cameron made his solo dive to Challenger Deep in the deep sea Challenger submersible. He spent 3 hours at the bottom. He described the environment as desolate and lunar. His cameras captured sediment, microbial mats, and small crustaceans. But he also captured something that his team later described only as an unidentified biological mass in one of the post-mission technical briefings. The footage was reviewed. It was logged. And then it disappeared from public discussion entirely. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just what happened. Now here's where it gets strange. In 2014, a research team from the University of Aberdeen deployed lander vehicles, unmanned baited traps with cameras, into the Mariana Trench. What they pulled back in terms of footage became one of the most discussed findings in deep sea biology that year. But it was discussed quietly in academic circles, not on the evening news. They found snailfish, specifically a species of snailfish, Pseudoleparus sweri, living and actively feeding at depths exceeding 26,000 feet. These are not small creatures hiding in crevices. They were swimming, competing, functioning. A full ecosystem of them operating in conditions that should, by every physical calculation, make complex biological function impossible. The snailfish solved the pressure problem through a molecule called trimethylamine oxide, TMAO. At extreme depths, this compound stabilizes proteins that would otherwise be crushed and deformed by pressure. The deeper the fish, the higher the concentration of TMAO in its cells. But here's the thing the papers mention and then quickly move past. Scientists calculated the theoretical maximum depth at which TMAO can function. The biology hits a ceiling, and that ceiling is approximately 27 feet. Below that point, even with maximum TMAO concentration, the compound itself begins to destabilize under pressure. Challenger deep is 36 feet. That's a 9,000-foot gap between what biology should allow and what the Trieste crew reportedly observed in 1960. Something was moving at a depth where nothing with complex biology should be able to move. So either Picard was wrong about what he saw, which is possible, or something exists in that trench that operates on biological principles we haven't mapped yet. Both options are uncomfortable, but the second one is the one scientists quietly keep coming back to. And snailfish aren't the only thing pulling at this thread. In 2016, oceanographers deployed hydrophones, underwater microphones, along several points of the Mariana Trench as part of a NOAA-backed acoustic monitoring project. The goal was to establish a baseline sound profile for the trench. What they expected to capture was the ambient noise of deep water, geological creaking, distant whale calls filtered down through miles of ocean. What they captured instead included a sound that took the research team over a year to partially classify. It was low frequency, biological in origin, long in duration, and it came from depths well below the zone where any known biological sound producer has been documented. The team published their findings. They named the sound the Western Pacific Biotwang, a deliberately clinical label for something that, if you listen to the actual recording, sounds like nothing you've ever heard in nature. It has tonal qualities that suggest a large, air-filled biological structure, a swim bladder or equivalent, something creating resonance. The problem is that nothing with a swim bladder has ever been confirmed at those depths. Swim bladders, the gas-filled organs fish use to control buoyancy, can't function under extreme pressure. They collapse. they're incompatible with the deep trench environment. And yet, the acoustic signature is consistent with one. NOAA researchers stated publicly that the sound was likely biological, in origin possibly a new species of baleen whale. But baleen whales don't dive to Mariana Trench depths. The deepest confirmed whale dive on record is just over 800 feet, less than a third of the way down. The Biotwang came from significantly deeper than that. The paper offered no firm conclusion. It noted the sound was not yet fully explained. And then the research moved on to other things. Now let's talk about the footage. Because acoustic data is one thing, visual confirmation is another. Between 2016 and 2019, NOAA's Okeanos Explorer conducted a series of remotely operated vehicle dives throughout the Pacific, including several passes along the outer slopes and upper walls of the Mariana Trench. The mission produced thousands of hours of footage, most of which is publicly archived and genuinely extraordinary, just for what it shows about normal deep-sea life. But within that archive, there are several clips that ocean biology researchers have flagged as anomalous. One clip, recorded at approximately 19,000 feet, shows a large, elongated mass moving through the water column at the edge of the ROV's light range. The shape is indistinct. It doesn't match the movement profile of any documented deep-sea species. It doesn't exhibit the characteristic motion of a whale, a giant squid, or a large jellyfish. The three most common explanations offered when something large and unidentifiable appears in deep-sea footage. It moves with what one researcher described in a conference presentation as directed locomotion, purposeful, controlled. NOAA's official response was that the footage was inconclusive and that the object was likely a large gelatinous organism, a catch-all category that covers everything from giant siphonophores to species not yet formally described. That's a reasonable answer. It's also an answer that explains nothing specific. A siphonophore, a colonial organism made up of thousands of individual creatures acting as a single body, can reach lengths of over 150 feet. They're real. They've been documented. And they're alien enough in their biology that even confirmed siphonophore footage looks like science fiction. But siphonophores drift. They don't demonstrate directed locomotion. They go where the current takes them. Whatever was in that clip wasn't drifting. Here's what makes all of this genuinely unsettling. Beyond the individual data points, the Mariana Trench is not just deep, it is geologically active. The trench sits along the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the Mariana Plate, a subduction zone where one massive section of the Earth's crust is sliding beneath another. This process generates heat. It generates chemical gradients. It creates hydrothermal vents, cracks in the seafloor where superheated water, rich in minerals and chemical energy, pumps continuously into the surrounding ocean. Hydrothermal vents were only discovered in 1977. Before that, Scientists were confident that complex ecosystems couldn't exist without sunlight as the primary energy source. Photosynthesis was the foundation of all life. That was settled science. Then they found vent communities. Tube worms 6 feet long. Shrimp with no eyes, but with heat-sensing organs on their backs. Crabs coated in bacteria they farm for food. An entire food web running on chemosynthesis using chemical energy instead of sunlight. It rewrote the textbook overnight. And there are hydrothermal vents inside the Mariana Trench. Ones we've only partially mapped. Some we've never visited with cameras. The same geological forces that created vent ecosystems in the shallow parts of the trench are operating in the deepest sections too. We just haven't looked. And the few times we have looked, we've come back with data that doesn't fit the existing models. That pattern has a name in science. It's called a knowledge boundary, the place where confirmed data ends and the unknown begins. Scientists are trained to treat knowledge boundaries with caution, to not overclaim, to stay within what the evidence supports. But knowledge boundaries are also exactly where the most significant discoveries happen. Every major revision of our understanding of ocean life has come from pushing past a knowledge boundary that previous generations thought was a wall. The flatfish at 36,000 feet was past a knowledge boundary. The Timao ceiling at 27,000 feet is a knowledge boundary. The Biotwang came from below a knowledge boundary. The directed locomotion clip was filmed near a knowledge boundary. None of these things prove that something large and unclassified lives in the deepest sections of the Mariana Trench. Let's be clear about that. The evidence is fragmentary. Some of it is contested. Some of it has mundane explanations that just haven't been confirmed yet. But here's the question that serious researchers keep asking quietly. In the margins of conversations that don't make it into press releases. If something did live down there, something large, something adapted to pressures and darkness in ways we haven't modeled yet, would we know? Answer, honestly, is probably not. Our total time on the floor of Challenger Deep across all expeditions combined is measured in hours, not days, not weeks, hours. We have sent rovers to Mars and kept them operational for years. We have a space station that has been continuously inhabited for over 2 decades. We have mapped the surface of Venus through cloud cover from orbit. The deepest point on our own planet has received less cumulative human attention than a single moderately funded NASA mission. And in the brief glimpses we've managed, the minutes and hours of actual observation, we've found things that don't fit. Things that get logged and published and quietly filed under further research needed. The scientific community doesn't ignore the Mariana Trench. They study it seriously, carefully, with the tools available. But the tools are limited. The access is limited. And the results, when they come back strange, get processed through a filter of institutional caution. that tends to sand off the edges of anything that sounds too extraordinary. That's not a cover-up. That's just how science communicates. But it means the full picture doesn't reach you. The biotwang gets a clinical name and a journal citation. The unidentified mass gets labeled likely gelatinous. The flat fish observation gets treated as a possible misidentification. And the question, what actually lives at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, stays open. Not because no one is asking it, because every time we go down there to answer it, we come back with something that makes the question bigger. The deep trench is 1,500 miles long. It's up to 43 miles wide. At its deepest, it drops nearly 7 miles below sea level. We have physically explored a fraction of its total volume. Whatever is down there, whether it's species we haven't named yet, biological mechanisms we haven't modeled yet, or something else entirely, it has had millions of years of undisturbed darkness to develop in. We've had a few hours to look, and even in those few hours, the data came back strange. So the next time a researcher gives a careful, hedged non-answer about what lives in the deepest parts of the ocean, pay attention to what they're not saying. Because sometimes the most honest answer to what's down there is the one nobody wants to print. We don't know. And that should terrify you just a little.